Let me tell you a little bit about what's going on.
Okay.
These surveys that we gave you, they're designed to measure basically how happy you are. You scored a perfect score, higher than anybody that we've given this test to since we've been doing this. It's really quite remarkable.
Good.
I think we're all anxious to know, why do you think that is?
Well, I'll give you a very brief little summary of what I do every morning when I wake up. I wake up and I say, this day I choose to be happy, well, and complete. That's first. I thank God for letting me get up. Then I thank God for the fact that I have running water in a toilet. I have soap. I have toothpaste. There are people in the world who don't have any of those things. And for food. Because sometimes we get them, I don't think I can make it today. I don't think I'm going to. But we have to realize that we are truly blessed. Then I thank God for peace in my house. I have a peaceful house, and I meditate. And then after I meditate and have my prayer, I just say, okay, God, how may I serve you today, and who can I help today? And finally, I watch cartoons. And when I watch the cartoons, I wait for the answers, I just ask. And that's a very happy, beautiful day for me, because I don't have any, cartoons never have a problem. There's always an end to it, right? Something good happens at the end, and I have several cartoons that I watch until my day begins. And so therefore, I don't have an attitude. I'm glad to be here.
I think you just told us in 2 minutes more than any of the studies we've looked over have. So I'd really like to thank you for coming in today and just generally doing fantastic work for helping out the children that you do and for having a fantastic attitude. Thank you so much for coming in, Mama Hill.
It's my pleasure. You should watch cartoons.
I do.
Yeah, oh, good.
What's your favorite?
Oh, my favorite is Clifford the Red Dog.
Clifford the Big Red Dog, Adventure Time for me. You should check it out. It's great.
Soap and Cake, subscribe.
Would you pray with me? God of all, bring joy to this place. Amen. So about 12 years ago, our family moved from Calgary to Toronto. My husband is a computer consultant, and he went out for like a little 6-week stint, and they offered him a full-time contract. And he and I, anyway, were in a place in our lives where we were wanting a little adventure and thought this would be a great way for our children to experience the big city. So we told our kids, who were at the time 4, 10, and 12, that we were moving, and 2 weeks later, we were in Toronto. Looking back, it probably wasn't the wisest decision of our lives because we ended up selling our house in a bad market. Our policy is buy high and sell low. And the children weren't able to say goodbye to their friends because it had been summer. And for the first month, the 5 of us lived in a small apartment with just 2 bedrooms. And we had to rely on the kindness of our family to move our stuff from Calgary to Ontario. So I'm quite sure that I would not do it this way now. But at the time, it seemed like a fun thing. But the problem was that my kids had a hard time adjusting to their new surroundings. If you've ever lived in Toronto or even been there, you know there's a good reason that we non-Torontonians call it the center of the universe. And for my kids, being from Alberta made them feel kind of like an outsider. And culturally, there's this subtle difference. They felt that the people in Ontario weren't quite as outwardly friendly as the people back home, and they missed that kind of casual congeniality that we have on the prairies. So they had a tough time making good friends, and I would say they were generally unhappy. So now at this point, they were enrolled in school, and we had sold our house here, and we're living in Toronto for at least a few years. So there was nothing that we could do to change that reality. But I kept trying to encourage them to look on the bright side of things. Don't worry, be happy, is what I said. And to make more friends and enjoy living in this big city. There's so much around. And it didn't seem to work. So eventually, I told them that they needed to find joy, even if they were unhappy. This phrase, find joy, became a kind of mantra for us. And each day when I dropped them off at school, I would say, find joy. To remind them that even when you are unhappy, if you look for them, there are moments where joy breaks through, where you sense that the world does not begin and end with how you feel or your difficult circumstances, but that life is infused with love and purpose and meaning. So I've continued this phrase, find joy, for my kids whenever they're going through a rough patch. I even had a painting made for my daughter on her 16th birthday, and that's it on the screen. And I put that phrase on it, find joy, and we hang it right outside the bathroom, so every morning when she starts her day, she sees that. And I must admit that sometimes when I say to them, find joy, they roll their eyes at me. But there are other times when that reminder has made the difference in a bad day for them, and it's helped them through that rough patch to better days. So implicit in this phrase, find joy, is the essence of what the woman in that clip was saying. Because while happiness fluctuates based on circumstances and is dependent on your needs being satisfied, joy is really a decision. Joy is found as you reflect on your life and all that you have. When we decide to live in gratitude and commit ourselves to others, as that video suggests, we find joy. And when we open ourselves to play and creativity, we find joy. Joy comes in that awareness that the universe as a whole is unfolding in magnificence, and our small lives are merely a glimmer of a grander reality. Now, I admit this distinction between happiness and joy is not always clear, and they're often used interchangeably. But I think it's important to think deeply about these two concepts and how they relate to today's psalm. Because our translation that was read says, happy is the one who follows God's law. But when I looked back in the Hebrew in terms of what word is used, it's probably more accurate to say blessed is the one who follows in God's law, because happiness is often this internal state, while blessedness is a measure of a life's meaning, a measure of joy. I can kind of illustrate the difference with this little bracelet I have here. It's one of those Pandora bracelets, and maybe some of you have it. So I look at this bracelet and I think, oh, isn't that pretty? Look at, I have some diamonds on one of them and purple on the other, and this is really pretty. It kind of makes me happy to look at it. But then I look deeper and I think, well, this is the one that my husband gave to me on our 25th anniversary. And this one here is what my children gave me as I went off to school in Halifax. And this one here was a Christmas present reminding me of my journey and my path. And so this bracelet is pretty and makes me happy. But when I think about the significance and I put it in my life, it brings me joy. And I remember that I am truly blessed. These distinctions are also made clear in a study that was done at Stanford University on the difference between happiness and meaning. So happiness, by their definition, is rooted in having one's needs and desires satisfied. It's this state of being free from unpleasantness and unpleasant events. So somebody is happy if they have more good and pleasant feelings than unpleasant emotional reactions. For instance, there are things that make me happy, that evoke a pleasant emotional state in me. I love a warm and sunny day, or a good movie, or a hike in the mountains, or a piece of chocolate, preferably with nuts, maybe caramel bits sprinkled over ice cream paired with good cake, and perhaps some whipping cream to boot. That makes me really happy. Like so many other things make me happy, and I'm sure you can name a lot of things that give you a happy buzz. But the Stanford researchers found that happiness is mainly about getting what you want and need, including from other people or using money to buy it. Happiness involves more taking than giving. It's focused on feeling good in the present. So to be happy, you concentrate on now. These tendencies to find happiness are shared in all animal life. All want to have their needs met and avoid unpleasantness. But in contrast to happiness, meaningful lives weren't always happy. To find meaning, one has to spend some time considering your life in the totality and how it connects to other people. The researchers found that value and meaning are in giving as opposed to taking. And while happiness is very present-focused, meaning delves into your past and looks to the future to determine what is best in the long run. So sometimes when you're seeking meaning, you are unhappy. Sometimes it's more stressful or emotionally painful to seek after meaning over happiness. Meaning is not natural in the same way as happiness is. The Stanford study argues that meaning is culturally determined. It's a way that an individual participates in things of value for the entire society. The researchers say that the quest for meaning is a key part of what makes us human, and it is uniquely so. So, for instance, we might find meaning in working with the poor, or speaking for the oppressed, or sponsoring a refugee. We find meaning in creating art and music and drama. Meaning is found in caring for our children or our aging parents. And perhaps we find meaning in reflecting on politics and sharing our insights with others, but do it carefully. That's all I have to say. Or trying to change the world in protests and demonstrations. And in all these ways, we ascribe meaning to our activities. They're not done to make us happy. They are undertaken to change our world, even in small ways. So it seems to me that the core of a meaningful life is one that is lived inside a network of connection. A connected life is one that is blessed. It is one where you can find joy in the midst of difficult circumstances. And that leads me to the second research project. It's called the Grant Study, and it happened at Harvard, where male undergraduates were interviewed the first time between 1938 and 1940, and then they were followed for 75 years. So obviously by the end, all of them had retired and many had died, but they found through these interviews some universal truths when it came to determining what constituted a meaningful and happy life. In their instance, they call it happy, but I think we could more accurately say a blessed life or a joy-filled life. So first and most importantly, it really is all about love. Relationships were the only thing that truly mattered in this study. Many of them had successful careers, lots of money, and physical health, but if they lacked a supportive and loving relationship, they were unhappy. Secondly, money and career success diminish in importance when it's viewed in the context of their full life. There was one example of one's class or accumulation of wealth matter much less than whether you were content in the work that you did. That's an interesting thing to me because we always want more money, but being content in our work, like Proverbs says, was the most important thing. Third, you can always overcome happiness. One of the subjects didn't have very many good prospects, and he actually had tried to commit suicide. But at the end of the study, he was one of the happiest subjects because he had spent his time and his life seeking love. This focus on what was really important transformed his attitude and his life. And fourth, once again, connection was crucial. The researchers put it this way: joy is connection. The more areas of your life that you make a connection, the better you will be. Strong relationships are the strongest predictor of life satisfaction. Even in one's career, feeling connected to your work was more important than making money or achieving success. And finally, the last thing they found was that challenges in our lives and the perspective that they give you can make you happier. Researchers found that maturity involved this movement from narcissism, where it's all about me, to connection. And this in turn related to how well we deal with our challenges, because the capacity to see our troubles in a larger context and make the best of a bad situation, to make lemonade out of lemons, if you will, is an indication of a meaningful life. So considering the findings of these two studies, I would say that you can find happiness in many places, but it's kind of a slave master. It's a beast that has to be fed. Being happy in its purest form is a hedonistic pursuit, trying to find new things that give you that happy buzz, constantly seeking after a pleasant emotional state that keeps you trapped in a moment, avoiding pain and suffering, and unable to see the bigger picture, to find true meaning for your life. But on the other hand, those who look outside themselves and how they're feeling, who seek to give and receive love and make deep connections, they find joy even when they are unhappy. They are truly blessed. We know that relationships are messy sometimes, and our closest companions can make us really unhappy. Our kids can make us really unhappy, but I'm sure they'd say the same too. But when all is said and done, those we love and who love us in return give texture to our lives that can't be replaced by any pursuit of instant gratification. To be loved is to be held in the darkest moments of our lives. To be loved is to have someone to share the happy moments and to place them in the span of our life, to remember our history, to give them meaning and perspective. To be loved is to give of yourself for the sake of the other, to sacrifice for the common good. These are the insights that lay just beneath our psalm. Happy or blessed are those who don't follow the advice of the wicked or take the path that sinners tread or sit in the seat of scoffers. Those people are the ones who say, like our song, hey, don't worry about it, be happy. They say, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we might die. They hold nothing sacred. Everything to them is a joke. They encourage you to be selfish and look after yourself because nobody else will. They are the ones who are constantly looking for the new thing that they can get that will make them happy. They're out buying the latest gadget so they can feel important and superior, like the iPhone 6. If you have it, don't feel bad, but I'm a Samsung person. Anyway, I digress. They seek after money at the expense of relationships. The psalmist says that these people, the wicked, the sinners, the scoffers, are rootless. They are easily blown about by those things that lack substance. They seek after things that drag us away from God, away from love and connection, away from meaning and purpose and joy. But, the psalmist says, those who delight in the law of God are rooted like trees in a stream. They find nourishment that lasts. They are fed and they prosper, and God looks after them. What does it mean to delight in the law of God? I think foundationally it means that God has created our world in love. And at the core of our lives, we are connected to God in a visceral way. And from that love flows a way of being in the world that transforms our lives and enhances the lives of those who cross our path. The law of God is not a set of rules to follow. It is a way of being in the world that recognizes that life is sacred. Love is sacred. Connection is sacred. The law of God is written in our being. And if we pay attention to that primal urge to connect with each other and to love with abandon, we become rooted in God, much like those trees from our song. To delight in the law of God is to be rooted and grounded in the eternal one. A life that is rooted and grounded in God doesn't seek after fleeting pleasures for the sake of happiness. A life grounded in God understands that we are all connected and whatever we do affects the other. A life grounded in God suffers with those who are abused and broken. A life grounded in God seeks a path of peace and justice. A life grounded in God puts trials in perspective and digs deep to overcome and prevail. A life grounded in God understands sacrifice for the greater good. A life grounded in God is deeply connected to this earth and lives with respect in creation. A life rooted and grounded in God is truly blessed. And for me, that's where that phrase, find joy, is lived. Because it's easy to find happiness. You can buy it. But it's fleeting, and it demands ever great attention to sustain it. But if we tap into that sacred center of our lives, if we understand how truly blessed we are, when we consider that even in our darkest moments, we are loved and cherished by God, we find a deep and abiding peace that gives meaning to our lives. We find joy. May it be so. Amen.